I work as a user experience lead researcher and strategist with CA Technologies in Broadcom, which is a Broadcom company now. And when you say that I'm from US, Plano, Texas, that's just been an year that I'm over here. And that's due to Broadcom relocation policy that I had to come over here to work. And trust me, since the past 1 year, I've not visited the office. So, so I'm in the US, but then working with the US team, but still, as all of us on a similar note, working remotely. And I'm just able to work because of the love for the work that I have. And I'm sure all of us are doing that only because of that single reason. That said, I know it's a tough situation that's going on in India, and definitely it's a soft situation actually. So just my best wishes with all of you and your family. Take care. With that note, let's begin. And what do we have in store today? We all know the session is going to be recorded. And we are going to use the chat function to submit more questions. Recording to this session again will be made available. And Puneet will give us more details about the fourth one, which is staying tuned for our upcoming training. Yep. So this is something which I wanted to start with. I mean, not even the agenda. This is something which came from you as part of the survey that we took. And this primarily shows what is, Puneet, I see myself.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is primarily a framework which we use before any kind of user interaction. And for me, the audience and the users are you currently, today, now. So I got to know what is your expectation from this session and what is that you really do not want to see. And this is from the survey during registration that you have filled. What we call this is, again, this is a part of UX. We call this as hopes and fears. What is it that you hope to see? And what are your fears that you do not really want the session to be? Among our hopes, you see different topics: evolution of UX writing, market demand and job scope, what's the approach and benefits to take, and a transition from UX writing from technical writing to UX writing. Is it worth it or not? How are we looking beyond writing? What are the basic differences between UX writing and tech writing? And good questions, can we do both? And are the user manuals that we work today a part of UX writing or equal to UX writing? And how can a tech writer add value to UX world? We'll go through a few practical examples and differentiation in remuneration aspect and UX writing and copywriting. That's the most frequently asked question. And how did I get started in UX writing? I will share part by part and bits and pieces of this when and where we come across a few things relevant. Otherwise, I don't want this to be my biography. And which courses and which tools, open source documentation, latest developments in technical writing, hands-on UX writing. So these are the things which we today want to, we are looking forward to see in this session. What we don't want this session to be primarily is a theory or a monologue or a lecture or a Q&A session or a non-learning experience. Some of us also mentioned that we don't want this to be concepts and theories behind UX writing. Now, that said, we have these hopes, we have these fears. As we move forward, yep, this is what we're going to handle. Um, we are, in our hopes, not going to talk much about open source documentation, latest development in technical writing, and hands-on with UX writing, primarily because if we want to get hands-on on UX writing, an R is not enough. This will definitely give you those clues and cues which will help you get onto UX writing and give you an understanding. And that's where we're going to talk about concepts and theories behind UX writing. But then when I say theories, it is not typically theories that go by names. So those are not the theories we're going to talk about. But then I can give you ground and examples from my experience and from the work that I've been doing. So that's the word, that's the meaning behind those theories. And Q&A is definitely going to be part of it, sad part or happy, but we are going to have Q&A. That's primarily because we don't want this to be a monologue from me. I would like to hear from all of you because this needs to be an interaction, and that's where we have a section of Q&A in the end. As we move on, this is what we're looking forward to, and now comes the agenda. So just to give you an overview of what is it that we're going to cover today, We'll talk briefly about user experience. Again, when I went through a dry run for my slides, I just got 5 minutes for this. And 5 minutes, trust me, friends, is not enough for giving you a brief on the entire portfolio of what covers in user experience. But then we are going to talk about it from a UX writing perspective. We are going to talk about what UX writing is primarily, what are different tenets of UX writing, what is the strategy that is involved. We'll touch a few examples to give you a feel of UX writing, but not deep dive into it. I'll give you resources, share resources with you. We're going to talk a few things about the tips and tricks of the trade, and then we'll head on to questions. I'm going to give a lot of time to questions. And this is where we're talking about user experience. And when we talk about user experience from end to end, this is really important for us to understand what is research. We start any kind of experience or any kind of project or any kind of work in user experience field with doing the research part. Necessarily need not be a single person doing this thing entirely end to end. There might be multiple people. You might have a UX researcher doing research, and then you might have the analysis part being done by a strategist, the task models, the user stories being built, use cases being built, personas being applied, getting that things into an insight and then developing that UX vision, coming up with a concept where you ideate, you sit with teams, you sit with your participants, you explore options, you come up with sketches, validate what you have, again, reiterate and work upon it. We know all these things, and these things are not something that can be done to get done by a single person. But now, when we reach from the research part to the design part, we want to understand where does UX writing stand. Puneet, can you give me control, Puneet? Is there a possibility? No, we need to go back. So we see the user experience part on the top. It runs all through. So if any of us is thinking that I want to be a UX writer and I will do just the single thing or the single part, trust me, it's not that simple. I'm not scaring you off, but then UX writing is something which spreads across the entire user experience portfolio. And me in my researcher role today, if I have to write an invite or if I have to get my participants onboarded, I need to send an invite to them. Need to send a mailer to them. That's writing. That's creating an experience for them. That's a part of UX writing. And I do it myself. I do not have a separate UX writer for that. So you will get this as we move forward, how UX writing is tied in each and every role and how important it is to understand that we have very few companies today who stand out and talk about we want to recruit UX writers. But on the whole, if you need to get into UX writing, you need to get into UX, and you will definitely be writing in your role, whichever role you are. So if you pick any of these roles in this entire end-to-end cycle you see here, you are going to write. Yeah. So when we're talking about this, what is UX writing then? And this is the most comprehensive definition that I've found. Um, with the current situation that we are in, we have come across words which are unprecedented, curbside pickup, frontline workers, vaccine trials, remote, new normal, invincible. These are the words, quarantine, lockdown. These are the words we've never heard before. But in the past 1 year of this pandemic, we came across all these words and we've started using this, right? These are the words that we've been introduced to, most of us have been introduced to just a year back. And we get to listen these words, hear them from so many people, right? And just imagine UX field, it's not that old, but then the way words and jargons are emerging each day, it's really difficult for us to keep pace with them. It's just an year and pandemic has gifted us so many words. Imagine what a field can gift us over years. So what is UX writing? It is a multifaceted role involving research. So it is a multifaceted role, friends. It involves research, testing, optimization, with an ultimate aim to create intuitive and enjoyable digital experiences. Very important is intuitive and enjoyable. And digital experiences need not be necessarily, you might add that experience You don't need a UI or a device to show those words. Even in voice interactions, who's writing that? There is a UX writer behind that, right? So you are creating experiences. You don't need a platform for people to read those words, right? You've got so many audibles, you've got so many things which a user cannot see. Or it's just the experience, right? So that's what we're talking about. Now, what are these different steps? There are so many facets that are built into this when we talk about it, starting with user research, as I've mentioned. So user research, what we do is primarily through exploration and discovery. And when do we do this? We do this through, how do we do this? We do this through data mining, A/B testing, or customer surveys, interviews, and analysis. I mean, these are methods and methodologies, but then what are you doing at the back end? You're finding out what your customers want, and most importantly, what they don't want, the words they use, and how we can best serve them. So this is really important. What you have to do through research is to understand this aspect. When we talk about brand voice and messaging strategy, what is that? It is messaging, identity, positioning, brand voice, and the tone that you have from your organization. Every organization has a tone, right? So that's what is brand voice. And as UX writers, we end up creating that brand voice. Like you have got style guides, there is a template for brand voice altogether, and it's a separate topic that you create as setting a standard so that there is consistency all through. It's a non-negotiable for any memorable brand creating great experiences. You need to have a brand voice. When we talk about UX writing and product content strategy, it is primarily so that we know how we connect to our people. It might be through in-app microcopy, help content, CX, or supporting macros, autoresponders, onboarding emails, or website copy, anything for that matter. You might have so many things. How you're going to interact with them? How is that the user going to see what it is? And when we talk about constant curiosity and learning, it is the most important part. It is the most important part because it is what is going to help you all through this field. It is a constant upskill that's required. And if we go next, this is how I hate to keep these animations. I thought I was in control. I'm sorry for this, Puneet. Yeah. So yeah, this is how a brand wise and establishing trust, empathy, engagement. And when we talk about UX writing, it is being clear, concise and conversational. All these three, these contribute to great content experience. This is what we're looking forward to. And who's doing this? Puneet, next, please. It is a UX writer. What does a UX writer do? Speaks a user's language, does many more things beyond these bullet points, but then primarily and to the core, a UX writer will have to speak a user's language, will have to hone, I mean, develop a designer's mindset, should be actively listening. I mean, seriously, listening is so important that I cannot even say how important it is. And it is so difficult to be shut when you're listening. Interpersonal relationships, constant learner. So these are the things that are really important traits of a UX writer. When we talk about what are the different aspects of UX writing throughout a complete circle, this is what it is. You see right from investigating or attracting a customer, converting it into a sale, getting them onboarded, engaging them. What do we do when we break things, and how do we transform that? All these steps have got different subcategories, and what are the different aspects of UX writing that are involved, like ads, articles, tweets and posts, endorsements, reviews. Now, these are different forms of UX writing, right? This is the way you're going to communicate. These are the words that you're going to use. I mean, you're going to use your words in these formats, these platforms. So that's what we're talking about. Uh, Puneet, we'll do one thing. We'll just go ahead with all of them together, and then I can start talking because, yeah, one, two, that's it. Yep. I think the last one is, yeah. Oh my God, it has taken this. Okay, one more, one more, Puneet. One more click. Okay, yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about over here, and it's primarily about goal alignment. What are these different tenets? When we deep dive into each one of them and talk about goal alignment, anything that we do begins with a goal. There have been disastrous UX studies primarily because the goals have not been defined clearly. You are so much in need of UX work. Sometimes you crave for it to that extent that when somebody comes to you, I'm quoting this instance from my real life example. When somebody comes to you with a request, why don't we do this study? Oh, you're all excited because of the passion that you hold for the job that you're doing, that you say, oh yes, let's do it. And by the end of the session, you know that you have left people in a very totally confused state, not just a confused state, but you leave people with low trust in the system and methodology. That's a bigger piece that needs to be mended. So why does that happen? Primarily because we do not define the goal. When somebody comes to you that this is something we need to do, ask questions. How is this relevant? How does this tie back to the overall organizational goal? How does it tie back to the user? Ask your questions. At every step, we need to ask questions. And that's where we get answers which will help us move forward in the right direction. Otherwise, we definitely will move forward, no hurdles as such. But then we wouldn't tie it back to a user or organizational goals. We are not going to help anybody by the work that we do. And that's not good. Brand voice creation. Now, this is a separate topic altogether. We cannot talk about it in depth right now. And I can tell you what does a brand voice mean. It actually includes those product principles, those concepts, vocabulary, verbosity, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. These are the different. Um, I mean, these are different parts of that tool. Brand voice creation is actually a decision making tool which helps UX writers and product teams make decisions from a UX writing perspective. And when we talk about content first design, this is really important again because we've always thought about mobile first. We've heard this kind of jargons, right? We've heard about these concepts and methodologies, but content first design means having a conversational design, having a face-to-face conversation to uncover any kind of edge cases or error situations. You need to have that conversational flow in the UX writing field that you do. How do you do that? You have tools like storyboarding. Yeah. You can call storyboarding to be a tool. You can call tools in UX to be methodology. So there is this interchangeable terminology. Sometimes a tool is a method. Sometimes a method can also be called as a tool. So storyboarding is one which kind of helps you with content first design. So to give you an example of content first design, you go ahead and give lorem ipsum text to a dev team and they develop. They do not bother what lorem ipsum is and they develop. And you see lorem ipsum at the user's end. So there is a break in that's a worst case scenario, which usually does not happen. And but then the context here is that start writing words instead of lorem ipsum so that you add context, so that you connect to the user, so that you connect to the goal. That's really important. And that's what storyboarding helps us with. And it helps us to move that conversation to an experience. So start writing from the beginning. Do not use placeholders. When we talk about UX text patterns, it is again a different topic altogether. To mention three of them, I have mentioned titles, confirmation messages, and notifications. But then when you talk about UX text patterns, there are titles, there are descriptions, there are empty states, labels, controls, buttons, text on buttons, transitional text, errors, no, and there's so many of them. There's so many of them when you talk about UX text patterns, and each one of them needs to be dealt in detail and needs to be come up with a different approach. Now, these are the patterns which will build your the way you called a style guide. That's going to build. These are the components of a UX writing style guide. And all through, the biggest tenet for UX writing is editing. Now, what I mean by editing is to edit something, you need to have a purpose to edit. And that purpose is getting your work reviewed constantly. You get those inputs on what you need to review, how you would review, and then the important goal would be to make it more concise, keep it conversational, and keep it clear. So these are really important for us when we talk about any kind of tenet that is there for UX. And what does this bring? Puneet will move forward. What does this bring? This brings a value proposition. This brings a value proposition. This brings value to the work that we are doing, and how do we measure that? It's really important again to measure what we are doing. And most of the organizations fail to do this because it is an overhead. You just, and not just an overhead, you realize it is important. You realize it needs to be done, that you track metrics around what you're doing, but then always we end up having that, no, we don't have time to do this, not enough time. And there's never going to be enough time to do this. Metrics for content effectiveness are primarily you have users onboarded or not. This is a very big aspect when it comes to adoption of products. Are your users onboarded well or not? Are they engaged well or not? And when you talk about completion, retention, referrals, cost, all these are the metrics for content effectiveness. How do we reach these metrics? Primarily through user research and evaluation methods. Again, methods or tools. We've got heuristics, we've got A B testing. There are many evaluation methods. There are different scales of measuring content effectiveness as well. And funny. And when we talk about this, what is it that we are building? We are building an entire UX writing strategy by one being curious and asking questions. That's where we begin. And I call this multi-personality, multiple personality in order, not a disorder. Because when you're talking about your users, there are times and multiple times that you end up with multiple users. For example, if you're going to a bank, you have a teller. You're going to a bank, you have a teller, you have a person who's kind of at the cash counter. You've got so many personas in line in any kind of business, in any kind of task that you're kind of going to work on or going to write about. So these are multiple personas. When you get into these multiple personalities to understand them, that's what we mean by, I don't want to use that word, getting into their shoes or empathy, whatever you call it, is what going to give you a multiple personality and getting things in order so that you understand from their perspective. It's really important. You're building for somebody, you're writing for somebody. So who that somebody is so important to understand, because they are the ones who are going to in the end use what we are doing, right? You need to stick to the user and not to a process. So there are these processes. There are so many processes in each and every field. And multiple times I've come across these questions. Ruchi, what is the process which is the best process you suggest that we go ahead with when we have to go ahead with writing or when we have to go ahead with research? I'm like, see, if you say it is research and if you say a process, they don't go well together. Research is not process driven. There might be an approach to research, but they cannot be a process. If it is a process, then it is not research. You get my point. If it is research, it has to be really open ended. Now when we talk about UX writing, it's on similar lines. It's not bound by a process. When you know your user, when you know the user's need, when you know that goal, you are not going to stick to a process. You are going to see what works for that user, what approach is right to use in that context, right? That's really that helps you when you kind of build that goal, that objective, and then move forward. So, so that's what it means when you stick to the user and not to a process. And when we are talking about UX writing, it'll be surprising when I say data interpretation and eye for numbers. But we need to have this data interpretation and eye for numbers uh, because when you're in this field, there will be so many times that you will have to put your point forward to people with adding weightage to what you're doing. So these data interpretation and those numbers at hand that you have will always help you drive that conversation. So that's one of the challenges in UX writing, in fact, in the entire UX field, where you have to put a point through because your point through is definitely going to contradict the norms. It's definitely going to contradict the way things are. So you need to have those data and those numbers handy so that you have less resistance. I do not say no resistance. There will still be resistance, and there are different ways you pull it forward. But just so that you reduce that resistance, you need to have an eye for detail on numbers and data. So, and when we talk about UX writing strategy and methodology, we've got steps in a similar manner like we have in the entire UX field. We have the exploratory phase, we have the drafting phase. You explore, then you draft, come up with the draft. Then you go ahead, get that reviewed, and you release that content after you do that rework, right? You release that content, and the rapid growth is where you focus upon how you take it forward to adoption. What are you doing by doing this? You're just taking a step forward and going beyond and building that culture. What culture and why that culture? So that what you work today is shared, is showcased. You need to evangelize, you need to educate people around you. That's a very big piece. And there's no excuse like, I do not find time, or it's not my job, and I don't want to do it right now. I'm not in a mindset. We've got so many reasons and excuses not to build a culture. But when we build a culture, the person who's going to be benefited is just us. It makes our life, our job much more easier if we build a culture around what we are doing. And it cannot be spoken about like this. Once done, we get to see that by ourselves. That's another beauty of that. How do we build a culture, and how a culture affects what we are doing? And what happens if we do not do that? Puneet, next slide, please. It's like the absence of salt. There are examples like this which we see, and if you look at this, what is it missing? It's missing a UX writer who can just go ahead and separate an alert from an error, or is an action item required or not? What is it? It kind of reduces that cognitive load altogether, right? If you have it organized in the manner that you see right now. So that's really important for us. If you have a UX writer, it adds salt to the food that you eat. So a UX writer is definitely um, whose presence is not appreciated, but whose absence cannot be lived without. And what happens if it's good? What is a world which looks really nice and we see that, oh, we see good UX writing everywhere? Puneet, please. Yeah. You see Netflix, payment experience is written in strong and a very helpful language. You set up your payment, you cancel before a time. As a reminder, this will be done. No commitments, cancel online at any time. I mean, in that small space, they've given so many things in such a second manner. It's really so nice to have that conveyed to a customer. It builds that trust and confidence, right? Looking at Spotify, what does it do? It uses witty microcopy. When you unlike a song in your daily mix playlist, it says, "Let's pretend that that it never happened." And when you talk about Dropbox papers, empty state placeholders, I mean, placeholders are a different conversation altogether, and their usage has different questions as to who is your audience. There are people who consider, oh, placeholder, I should not be doing anything. Maybe it's text in there, right? It gives that perception to some people that, oh, there is text in there. So based upon the user, you need to have a proper usage of this. And placeholders have got benefits which outweigh the problems that they get along with them. And friends, I don't want to quote much. If you just go one click behind Puneet, we've got no, back Puneet, one more back. So I mean, there are so many examples. One more back, Puneet, please. Well, so we've got so many examples here. I don't want to quote all of them, because I want to give good time for examples. If you see the link that I've shared down there, this deck will be shared with all of us. I've got good examples at that point where you see when we talk about microcopy and what are examples to help you understand microcopy. I know you have questions related to what is microcopy and why is it being taught so much. So again, we are not going to deep dive into microcopy right now, but then we've got references of microcopy, and there's a very good resource where you can see examples to relate better. Yeah. We're going to just move to the tricks of the trade. And this is something I cannot emphasize more, that this is really, really so important. I would take a print out of this and hand it and keep it just in front of me to kind of go ahead by each one of them any day that I want to. And there has been always something that I look up to. I'll tell you, I'll quote an example and I'll also share that with you. If you search Google with I wish somebody said me, or I wish somebody told me, there comes in images something which is really, really, I used to have that for very valuable for a designer. I'll share that with you. And it quotes every single pain that we go through when we move from one field to the other. And I've gone through that. So it's really important for us to commit to more when it comes to both learning and performing. We need to remind ourselves that this is not a destination, but success all through. I mean, you end up somewhere and then you feel that, oh no, we have got so much to do still, right? So when you see things like that, the approach should be different. If you see that challenge as an opportunity, you would not feel that it is a challenge anymore. You need to learn from experts. I've done that all through. I still do that. You need to read, 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 and read more. There's no end to it. All that you can do is read. You do not have people hand holding you all the time. You might have mentors, but mentors, again, are experienced people who have got limited time and availability. They would again lead you to reading. So if you do not want to read, it's really tough in this field. You need to be open to a world of jargons and try not to build more. Think beyond UX writing. I want to emphasize on this a little more because we don't want to get stuck with UX writing. UX writing is something which is a part and parcel of every role in UX, be it an interaction designer, be it an accessibility expert, be it a designer, a UI designer. Everyone needs to write words. So you need to be a UX writer in each one of these. Don't say, I just want to be a UX writer. You will be overwhelmed. Trust me. Be on the lookout for opportunities. This is very important. Nobody today has, there are very few organizations which are at that maturity level where you have things in place, you have work coming in for UX, and then things are seamless. It is an ideal world. It does not exist at every shop. You need to be on the lookout for opportunities. And I have been not just looking out for opportunities, trust me, I have been creating opportunities. You see problems everywhere. It's just on you to pick it up and say that, yes, this needs to be worked upon. That's an opportunity. It might be challenging. You might not know how to do it, but once you're into it, you will do it. We always succeed through collaboration. That's really true, true every time. You cannot do everything all by yourself. You cannot own everything. There needs to be collaboration. And collaboration gives you so many things that you do not know. It gives you knowledge, it gives you strength, it gives you support, it gives you help to move forward, and it saves time. Most of all, it saves time so that you kind of go ahead and do more things. And so we want to do more things. Let's move forward to questions. And these questions are the ones that you've poured in through the survey. Once we're done with this, we'll have time to go ahead with questions that are not here and probably in the chat. Uh, what is the basic difference between UX writing and tech writing? If I have to answer this in a single word, it is user interactions. I've been a technical writer, and all that I was doing was interacting with my dev team, with my technical team, getting that information that I need to get into the docs and getting reviewed by them. Rarely I would sit on or I would shadow the project management in customer conversations, not run any customer conversations. As a technical writer, things might be different now. Trust me, it's been a while. I'm hoping things are different now. That touch with the end user, that constant interaction with the end user helps you keep your ears closer to the ground. That's where, if technical writing is more towards technique and technical aspects, user experience writing is more about the user. It is more user centric writing. We are writing for the user. We are not writing for the dev team. We are not writing for the technical team who's going to read. We are not writing manuals. And that's really, that was another question. How is the manual that we write today, is it UX writing? So a manual is a part of UX writing, but UX writing is not just a manual. I hope that answers. But then I'm open to more questions in that. When we go to the next one, what does a journey from technical writer to UX writing look like? How is life before and after becoming a UX person? How does thinking and approach to a problem change with this change? So, yeah, here is where I want to quote my example. So, I started my career as I'm an MSc in environmental science. I did it from all of us who are in Hyderabad would know Osmania University campus. I did it from the campus, and I did not get a job in environmental science. I was very sad about that. But then I knew that if it's not working, that there's something in that field that I've learned I should be applying. So I became, because environment and geography are related, I became a writer to a magazine, which was a kids magazine on geography. It was by name Geo Junior. So I streamlined it right from start to kind of streamlining a few issues of it. I became a sub editor and then an editor, and then I left. From content writing, I learned technical writing. Technical writing, I moved to Deloitte. I got an opportunity to work on tax memos. It was not just technical, it was very technical. So, but then that gave me an exposure to what technical writing is. And like I do have, I encourage all of us to have a goal towards learning and putting your budget across aside for learning at least one thing in an year, which I do. And my husband has been very supportive. He constantly encourages this, that what is it that you're learning this year? Give that time so that you don't need to go ahead and pursue that. Like I did instructional designing and I realized that I'm not made for it. It's okay to get into something and then move out. It's okay, so that you know what it is. And and then I was like, okay, if I'm doing technical writing now, what's the next step? And then came this UX boom. I was like, let me see what is UX. And you are, as technical writers, doing nothing different than what UX does. The only difference is, as quoted, user interactions and connecting to the user. That's it. You've got every relevant experience that a UX person has. I don't want to say UX writer, a UX end-to-end person has. Once you land into UX field and you are talking to multiple UXers in a room, if you are talking to 10 people, two of them are from some design institutes. Remaining eight today will be from various diverse backgrounds. And we are counting on experience, right? We are not counting on probably those terminology, those jargons, those methodologies. Life teaches you. Once you are into UX writing, I have learned it the hard way. And the hard way has been a pleasure for me. It will be a pleasure for you if you are passionate about it. And why I tell you this is because as I get so many mentees, I get so many mentees who come to me, and um, I don't want to call them mentees until I have a second interaction with them. The first interaction is, Ruchi, I want to get into UX writing. What do I do? Okay, this is what I want you to go and read and come back to me. If I hear back from you, you're in, you're on board. I understand that you're ready to take the pain of reading, even if you don't like to read. You're ready to take the pain of understanding things and getting pleasure out of it, even if you think, and you will be excited if you are coming back to me. That really means that, yes, you are worth to be a mentee. So there is a test for, moving from technical writing to UX writing. And how is it before and after? It definitely changes your approach. Like I mentioned earlier, you wouldn't call it a challenge anymore, you would call it an opportunity. You would look at it as an opportunity. Oh, this is something that I look at. Come on, let me pick this up. This is what you say. You wouldn't look at it, oh my God, this is something that's coming my way. Do I hide? Do I put it on somebody? Is there someone who can work on this? That's not what you're going to do anymore when you really love UX. When you really love the work that you're doing, it's definitely going to change your approach to a problem, because problem is no more a problem, it's an opportunity. What are the challenges that a UX writer would experience? And as a fresher or being from technical writer background with no knowledge in the UX writing, is UX writing a lucrative career option? When we talk about lucrative career option, um, it depends on us. Primarily, it depends upon us. And when we talk about what are the challenges that a UX writer would experience, everything that you do as a UX writer is a challenge, right? From in-depth understanding of UX writing rules, the research techniques, the voice development and implementation, and more. How to create storytelling experiences, how to develop a strategy, how do you deliver workshops, and give and receive feedback, um, hone on your writing skills. These are all challenges. These are talents and these are challenges. And I say them that the challenges primarily because you are counting yourself as a fresher, right? Till the time they become a talent, they are a challenge. You need to understand how you create user centered content. They take that content first approach, conduct a content audit, and collaborate with others on content and develop an entire content style guide. So you see, just content has got so much in it. Entire journey mapping, reading psychology, all these things. So to put your knowledge into practice, I would strongly suggest volunteer a project for a real company with real content needs. There are resources, I can share that with you, who in real time use the work that you do and that can get into your portfolio. And for building a portfolio, it's a 2020. You go to an organization, they ask for an experience. How would you get an experience without being into it, right? So that's where building a strong portfolio with relevant projects makes is really important. And again, that's where we come to certifications and portfolio. Is certification important or is it portfolio? Which one is more important? I come from a world where I would say there's no need of certifications. I started, uh, but there is that comes with a quote unquote certification. You to get started, you just need to just get on those concepts. Get on a jump starter course somewhere. Get on something small so that which gives you those concepts so that you understand and gauge you really want to do this, and then go in for any kind of certification later on. What I did is I was doing my technical writing, and over the weekends, there was this institute from Pune, which was conducting UX writing, a jump starter course. I joined that institute. So I was booked for, I didn't have a holiday for 3 months because all my weekends I had this course outlined. And uh, once I was done, I just went to my manager and I told her, she knew that I was going through this course over the weekends. I was lucky enough that my manager was helpful to get me through when I saw an opportunity internally. I told her I want to move. It's very hard to let go, but I was lucky where my manager was like, do you think you really like this? I had to tell her, for those of us who understand Hindi, I told her, हाँ मोहब्बत हो गई है. And she was like, I cannot stop you now. So that's the level of passion you need to have to get into this field. You just cannot say, can I do UX writing? Oh, it is the buzzword. Let me try if I like it or not, and then move out. Things like these will not get passion into you. I'd say just get into a jump starter course. It'll give you that gauge. You can gauge, oh, it's for me, it's not for me. You'll get that understanding immediately. And when you talk about certifications, after I got into the field, I understood that I need some formal way because I'm talking to people who are from design institutes. I need to have that level of knowledge. I got into HFI certification. I got myself CUS certified. It was not easy. I would sleep for 2 hours to 3 hours before my certification exam. With a job, with kids, it's not possible, is what people think. It is possible, but then there are sacrifices from your end. You need to be ready for that. And you need to have support. Biggest thing, support. Supporting families. If you have that, then definitely you are in. It just requires effort from your end and time and planning. You can do it. Um, what you need to have is as a portfolio and certification, more than that, is basic level of competency. You need to see what are the job openings and tweak your portfolio based on the requirements, because you need to have knowledge of those key areas. That's enough. You have knowledge about those key areas, show them in portfolios, and talk about it that you can do it given an opportunity. You talk about the process. You talk about what are the different nuances that you need to take care of during an entire end-to-end process. I think that's more than enough. Your portfolio will be the ultimate decider. And it's very beneficial if you have a prior UX experience. Now, what did I do in that category? I was working on a documentation team. I was working on a product which was on workload automation. I picked up a user flow. I I did a user mapping journey. What does a user do end to end? What are the different screens that come at each point? With these screens, what is it that's crappy and what can be made better? I did wireframes using Balsamic, basic Balsamic, and then I took it forward to my team. And they were like, you are a writer. I'm like, yes, but this is something I want you to validate because this is something I want to do for the product. You don't need that title of UX to do some good to the product. You already have that experience. Do it in whatever field you are. Do it in whatever field you are. And if you talk about remuneration, which is the last question here, it's not up right now. One more click and it will be there, Puneet. Remuneration is something you cannot. It depends upon many things. Most of them are, one of them is demand, the other is the value of the work that you're doing, and the maturity level of the organization that you're planning to go. There are multiple things that decide what remuneration is. So, friends, I've stopped thinking about remuneration. When you are passionate about something, you do not think about the remuneration. You do not think about money. And I have not been thinking about it because I have my partner who is my financial, I mean, he has all the headaches. So he takes it entirely. It is to that extent that I do not know either my Form 16 in India or W2 here, what goes in. I do not have visibility of that as well. You might think, to be very naive, you might think this is complete ignorance, but I prefer this ignorance because it keeps me tied to the work that I do. And it really doesn't matter to me. You know what? Every year I get a hike. I look at the expression on my husband's face and then understand, okay, is that a good hike? Is that a bad hike? So it doesn't matter to me because it's not tied to my work at all. What I get back from work is beyond the remuneration. And if you reach that stage, it doesn't matter to you what is remuneration. How to understand what a hiring manager is looking for? How much time do we have? Oh, hardly any time. What a hiring manager is looking for is whatever it is. For me as a hiring manager, I first look at the passion of a person. What is it that drives that person? Then I talk about the basic rules and the best practices. Are they just gauge if they really know any basic rules or practices? How to write an error message or what's the best way to put a line instruction below a UI or mobile screen is not what I look forward to. I look forward to understanding how secure and knowledgeable enough that person is to work independently at different stages. I mean, if it is an entry level, handholding is needed. If it is mid level, a less handholding is needed. But when you're talking about a senior recruit, you the senior recruit is going to do the handholding part, right? So that's at different levels that changes. And the most important thing is I look forward to a person. Is that person having that ability to flex easily when changes pour in? It's really important because there will be changes and always are. So that's a bigger piece. You need to be ready for any changes. You need to be ready to pick anything that comes your way. How you plan, how you work it out is definitely something which you will need guidance for, and that's where you have mentors. Mentor, um, again, it's a very important thing. If you are talking about a mentor, why is it that you need a mentor? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And what is it that you need? Define these things at your end before you even reach out to a mentor. And don't have a single mentor, have a mentor for each and everything that you want to do, a different mentor for everything. That's what I have done, and it worked well for me. I still reach out to different people for different things. Management, I reach out to somebody. UX, I reach out to somebody. In UX design, I reach out to somebody. Strategy, I reach out to somebody else. Everybody is not good at everything, neither am I, nor are you. But then for us to get that knowledge and to have those mentors and the right direction, it's really important to have that collaboration at different levels. Skills and qualifications. I need more 5 minutes. I'm not sure if we are ready for that and how hard pressed we are with time, Puneet.
Go ahead.
Okay, just 5 more minutes. And what are the skills and qualifications that I need to get started in UX writing field? UX writing, good grammar and English goes unsaid. Highly efficient at communication, being able to shorten things, briefer, succinct, concise, but then yes, a balance between brevity and context. It shouldn't be so brief that it loses the context altogether. It doesn't add any value in that case. Then you want to have a lot of compassion and empathy for your users. That's important. UX design knowledge for very specific elements of design. It's needed. um, Relationship building, persuasion is very important because you need to persuade product team managers to the extent that you need to be ready to fight always. Always don't regard that as a fight, but then it is a fight. Technically it is a fight you have to do every day. And very important is the ability to harness and understand data. And I've mentioned this earlier. This is important for you to help you to support a point, to back up a point, to want to make through and later on prove the results of that point, right? So you need to have that. Uh, and when we talk about any specific courses to get on board, learn interaction design and information architecture. This will, I'm telling you specifically interaction design and information architecture because they cover UX end to end. You understand the flows and journey maps, and you will have the required level of UX knowledge to kind of jump into UX writing if you specifically want to get into that. Having HTML and CSS knowledge is an added skill. When we talk about design tools, you don't need to get hands on for UX writing on any tool. If you have to write, what comes to your mind? What do you need? It's just a pen and paper to write, right? You don't need a tool to go ahead and write. And for user experience writing, you need a user experienced mindset, a user oriented mindset, and that paper. That's it. But then if you're talking about design tools, the ones um, that you need to at least have visibility of are Figma, Adobe XD, Sketch, And nowadays it's Miro that's kind of very handy. It's just getting in and everyone is using. So these are the tools. I'll share this information with you. Figma, Adobe XD, Sketch, and Miro. And particularly specialize yourself. Pick an area that you think is extra valuable and learn about it. Like, for example, accessibility, translation, localization, information architecture, like I've mentioned, UX for hardware devices like watches, mobiles, and cars, voice over experiences, right? These are the things. So, I mean, this is what I have as answers to all the questions that that we have today. In fact, apart from this, I'm sure we must be having things in the Q&A. The slide just before this was primarily to help us gauge that we've covered everything, what we started with, and definitely the questions are something I'm doubting we have time for, probably because of the initial glitch, or maybe I have been talking a lot. I'm sorry for that. But then this doesn't end here. Oh, we need to go ahead and connect beyond this session. I'm free to talk to anybody if you want in-depth understanding of any single topic. We can schedule time separately, and I am free. I can schedule how we go ahead and take that forward. I'm happy to take you through anything related to UX anytime. I can talk about it. I can take you through. I can help you. Um, and at the same time, I can gauge and tell you you are for it or you're not for it. um, any
Thank you.
questions? And
Thank you,
yeah, I
Ruchi.
leave it to Puneet now.
Yeah, Ruchi. So thank you very much. I think that was very informative. And for those of you, anyway, the presentation and the recording will be shared in case you have missed something. And most of the questions that we have asked in the questionnaire, so Ruchi has taken those questions from that only. So those questions were from you only. Still, if you have any question, so let's take 5 minutes more. Sorry for the delay, but technical glitches, you all know, it's beyond control. So without wasting time, I'm just scrolling through. Okay, so Tripti has asked, which department is UX writing closer to, marketing or product development?
User.
User. Okay, so I think there's
I can share
the
that.
yeah.
Uh,
Can you share some
Examples of the
examples?
experience. I can share that.
Of
Definitely.
source of inspiration and starting points. Then we have Prerna asking, can someone who has experience with dealing with content of everything, probably from learn UX writing? I'm talking about the perspective of knowing and understanding tech concepts, but essentially being just a writer or editor.
Yeah, yeah. Technical concepts again. I work with mainframes, so I need to have that level of technical knowledge, which you is not a required thing. I got on the job and learned about mainframe. So if you're talking about technical aspects related to the product, you eventually learn that. But technical aspects from UX writing perspective, there's nothing much. Like I've said, it's just the design tools, which are very similar to Photoshop, Adobe tools, and XD and Figma, and they're not very difficult. They're very handy. Miro is as simple as anybody can use. So there's not much technical glitch when we come to tools. It's just the initial start that we need to get on them.
Nice.
Uh,
Okay,
is
so
BCS
next one is
Foundation
the thing.
certificate in, yep.
Is BCS certificate in user experience required for a career in UX writing?
So any certification is required to give you that level of competency. I cannot vouch for institutions or the course curriculum until unless I see what that curriculum holds. I don't go by name, I go by the course curriculum. If you can share the course curriculum that they have, I can let you know how worth it is to go ahead with.
Okay, Zubairka asks, as a UX writer, do we need to write accessibility text ADA compliant too?
Definitely, definitely. There are institutions which outrightly reject a product because it is not accessible. I mean, it's not 508 compliant, that is accessible. You need to be very careful about that. Accessibility is a big part.
Thank you. And Zubairka, for your next question, I will say we have this UX writing group, WhatsApp group. If you have marked it in the registration form, I will add it to you there, and probably Ruchi and others can also share some good books or blogs there. So we can gather from there. Okay.
Certainly.
Divya
Yep.
asks, what is the output a UX writer produces?
That will be different at different stages. And I showed you the initial circle in the presentation. It has got all those outputs.
Okay. Tripti asked, are UX writers expected to create mockups and prototypes?
Not necessarily if you are primarily into a role of a designated UX writer, which is very rare and in rare organizations. But when you are into UX, you end up designing a minimum of workflows. That's important because you come out with research and you need to present what is it that you came out with. So that's very basic. You can do it with Balsamic, you can do it on Word, you can do it in PowerPoint. You don't need specific tool knowledge for that.
Yeah, I think wonderful. So that's all. Yeah,
We can always connect offline.
Alpha, you can connect to her directly, and we have this UX writing group. She is there. Please feel free to ask. Are the tools that you suggested are free to download?
Adobe XD. Among them, Adobe XD is free to download. It was earlier only limited to Windows. Now even Mac, it's free.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Kavita. Roadmap for UX learning. It starts with, is that a question? Starts with
Information design, information architecture, what's needed to be an all-rounder or a
collaborator.
collaborator. Okay. A roadmap for UX learning, again, not in 2 minutes, but then it definitely is there and starts with your interest and passion. I do have it, and I do handhold people who have landed into really good places. But that requires time and that requires perseverance, definitely more than any kind of information or a roadmap. It requires a push from your own end to get into it.
Surya asks, do you use any templates for UX writing?
Yes, all the time. There are templates available online. There are templates that you use, you create yourself depending upon your user. You tweak those which are available online as well. All the time, templates are needed. I have my own copy of templates which I use for UX writing or for invitations or for any kind of interactions with customers.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think that's all the questions right now we have, and we don't have more time, so I won't ask anybody else right now. But yes, certainly that UX writing group is there, and please feel free to join that, or else let me know. I will add it to you. You can connect directly there, and otherwise, Ruchi's LinkedIn ID is right there on the event page. Please feel free to connect directly with her.